Honestly, one of the strongest aspects of Divine Knockout is the roster. With only 10 characters, there's already a ton of variety and a little something for everyone. All of my friends who like Smite have at least one character from the game that they really like in the base DKO roster, and I think that's pretty dope. Still, a roster of 10 leaves plenty of room for growth and improvement. Today, I wanted to go over the Smite characters that I think are the most likely to end up in Divine Knockout. Without wasting any more time, let's get into my first pick. This one is extremely obvious, and as far as I'm aware, he's the only character to be leaked, but Zeus is going to be in this game. I've been told that he was accidentally activated for a little bit in the closed alpha, but I couldn't find any footage to back this up due to the non-disclosure agreement that was in effect when that happened. Still, even if this isn't true and didn't happen, Zeus is one of the cover characters for Smite. For years, when you looked up Smite on Steam or your console's store, you would be met with a picture of Zeus. He's also arguably the most famous character from mythology, period, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Zeus a lot sooner rather than later. Following Zeus is another pretty easy pick if you've played Smite, Bellona. Bellona is another one of Smite's mascot characters. She's probably been on more login screens than any other character in the game, and of course she's also been in a ton of cinematic trailers. She's just the star of Smite, and they really just seem to believe in this design, which makes a lot of sense. She's badass, she's fun to play, and she looks really cool. I would be stunned if Bellona and Zeus both didn't make their way into Divine Knockout before the Founders period ends. Now we can get into actual guesses for the game, and I'm going to start with Yemoja. Yemoja has a ton of potential for a fighting game moveset since she's essentially a waterbender. Her movement ability could easily be her ring that she places down, and it would just be so cool and unique compared to the movement abilities already in DKO. Her ultimate could translate pretty well into Divine Knockout. Honestly, she's been a mainstay of the Smite meta for almost half a decade now, and I think she's one of the more interesting picks out of the Smite roster. Now, following Yemoja is a character that I think outright has the best design in Smite, and that's Baron Samedi. Just look at this dude, just look at him. He oozes charisma and he's got a ton of potential for a fun moveset. Now, there may be some bias here since Baron is one of my most played characters in Smite, but I think he'd be a pretty sick inclusion. I'm also pretty intrigued on how they would add his ultimate Life of the Party in the game. I mean, the Coffin Suck could be a top 3 ult in Divine Knockout, or it could easily be a bottom 3 ult. Still, he's fun, and I love him. Now, this next character is going to be another member of the Arthurian pantheon, and it is Merlin. You see, Merlin might just be the most likely character to be added to the game other than Zeus. I mean, it certainly looks like he already has a stage in the game. If this stage doesn't scream Merlin, then I don't know what does. Merlin's been in multiple cinematics, and the name Merlin, the character Merlin, is maybe the most iconic character from folklore, period. I mean, everyone knows who Merlin is, and he would be a big win for DKO if he was added to the roster. You know, I actually forgot to touch on something earlier in this video. If you hit that subscribe button, you could get notifications for all of my future content. If you want more DKO content, subscribing is your best bet. Although I also cover multiverses, and I'll be covering other fighting games as they come out in the future, so you'll be getting plenty of variety in your life. Oh yeah, and the other thing I forgot to touch on, there are only 3 characters in DKO who don't also have a Chibi skin in Smite. You see, in Smite, characters get skins, and the Chibi skin theme is one of the more popular ones, and there are only 3 characters in this game, like I said, who don't already have a Chibi skin in Smite. This makes a lot of sense, especially considering that the recent Chibi skins Smite added seem to be the DKO models with bigger heads. There are still characters in this game attached to Chibi skins that predate DKO though, so I wanted to go over every Chibi skin in a quick lightning round. We have Zeus, of course, but we also have Medusa, Hades, Giannis, Ra, Thoth, Fenrir, Kukulkan, Arachne, and Amu's Cobb. Now here's the thing, I do think we'll see a couple of these make their way into DKO. I don't think we'll see all of these. If I had to guess on a couple of specific skins that I think could make the jump as characters in DKO, I would say Zeus, Hades, Ra, Fenrir, Medusa, and Arachne. Still, they're all worth mentioning, and I think they all have a pretty solid shot at being in the game. You know who else has a solid shot at being in the game? Loki and Odin. I'm going to discuss these characters together because a lot of the points I make for one character also apply to the other. For example, both of them have received a gigantic boost in popularity in general audiences thanks to both the MCU and the new God of War games. I also think it would be great to have Thor, Loki, and Odin in DKO since the game is 3v3. Wouldn't it be sick to run that trio with the boys? I definitely think so, and you know what? That's why we also need Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon in this game as well. They're hugely iconic characters in mythology, but the boys need to be able to play as the three brothers from Greek mythology. Now for the rest of this video, I'm going to spend some time highlighting pantheons that don't have any representation in DKO. This is going to be another sort of lightning round, but it's going to take a while because there are a lot of pantheons. Let's get this thing rolling with the Chinese pantheon. Honestly, I think there are three choices that make the most sense by far: Mulan, Sun Wukong, and Guan Yu. All of these characters are popular enough to be the first Chinese rep, but I also think we kind of need all three of them before we add anyone else from the Chinese pantheon. As for the Babylonian characters, it has to be Gilgamesh. The dude has been name dropped in far too many anime, and he has one of the coolest designs in Smite. Oh yeah, and he can dropkick you. Tiamat is a very close second place for sure, but Gilgamesh is the top priority. Moving on to the Celtic characters, I'd personally go with Cuchulainn or Kleena. They have designs and gimmicks that stand out from the rest of the Smite cast, but they also have a ton of potential for a cool fighting game moveset. I think the Morrigan could be interesting too if they find a way to include her ability to turn into other Smite characters. Now the Egyptian pantheon is pretty tricky because there are just so many of them and they're all great picks. I think Osiris, Khepri, Sobek, Iset, Ra, Anubis, Set, and Horus would all be badass picks for Divine Knockout, but let's be honest with ourselves, it'll probably be Neith. She's by far the most popular Egyptian character in Smite, and she gets her fair share of love from cinematics for the game. Honestly, I'll be surprised if she's not the first choice to represent the Egyptian gods, but hey, weirder things have happened. Now we've already discussed a bunch of Greek gods and goddesses, but I want to give some quick shoutouts to Ares and Kronos. They have really unique designs, and I think they would translate into really cool and special movesets in DKO. I'm pretty confident they'll both be joining the roster in the future. Back to pantheons without any reps, let's talk about the Hindu deities. Now here's the thing, I don't believe we'll be getting many Hindu characters in DKO. The biggest issue is that these gods and goddesses are from a religion that is still being practiced by more than 1 billion people today. Most of Hi-Rez's greatest controversies from Smite came from adding Hindu characters, but there is one pick that actually went really well. Shiva is iconic to the religion, and his kit was very carefully crafted to be as respectful as possible. There were no issues with his release, so I think if we get anyone from the Hindu pantheon, it'll be Shiva. Next up, we've got the Mayan gods, and I think this choice is pretty clear. Kukulkan and Camazotz would be dope, especially since we don't have many monstrous characters in the game yet. Everyone is pretty humanoid in DKO, however, I think the most likely characters are Chalk and Awelish. Chalk was name dropped in Black Panther 2, but he also has a design and kit that I think would be perfect for a fighting game. Awelix is pretty similar, where she has a lot of cool potential for a moveset, and if they can include her riding on her cat Suku, that would be extremely cool in DKO and pretty unique from the other characters in the game. Either way, I think we'll be seeing a bunch of Maya characters in DKO. I wouldn't be surprised if the game in a couple of years had even like 5 or 6. Now we've gotten to the Polynesian pantheon, and honestly, just add both of the characters. Maui and Pele have great designs, great movesets, and they're both more than popular enough to deserve a slot. I'd be fine with either of them coming first, and I really want to see them both in the game eventually. And with that, we're at the last pantheon I want to discuss today, the Slavic pantheon. This is another case of, dude, just put them both in. Chernobog and Baba Yaga are some of the most iconic names in folklore and mythology, and I think they both have more than good enough designs to be featured in the game. Before we end off this video, there's one more character I want to discuss, and that's Cthulhu. Everyone knows who Cthulhu is, and with the lack of more monstrous characters in DKO, he would absolutely stand out in a crowd. It's weird to bring him up through his pantheon since he's literally the only character from that pantheon. Still, I think he's one of the most likely characters to get added, and I don't think it'll even be that long before we see him. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below though. Do you agree with my choices, or is there a character that you really want to see in the game that I didn't mention? I think a couple characters people might bring up I didn't mention are Atlas and Scotty, but let me know, who do you want to see? Also, if you don't know Smite well enough to offer your thoughts, no worries, I'll be linking the website with all of Smite's characters in the description so you can take a peek at who we might be seeing next in Divine Knockout. With all of that said, thank you for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll smell you guys later.
I'm so low.